Hey, hi, hello. Welcome back to Chicklingchronicles, where we search for secrets and shadows, dive deep into storytelling magic, and let our inner magical girl shine, even when life feels more Doomtree than Moon Kingdom. I'm your host, Courtney, paranormal mystery author, professional plot twist enthusiast, and someone who can find the Sailor Guardians in all media in this post era. Today, we've arrived to the final chapter of our Sailor Moon miniseries. This one's all about legacy. Not just what Sailor Moon meant in the 90s or the 2000s, but what it means now. Because the magical girl genre didn't just survive, it transformed the way we tell stories, builds fandoms, and understand ourselves. And hey, if you've been vibing with this series, don't forget to follow, like, and subscribe. Drop a moon in the reviews if you're feeling moon blessed, and download your free Inner Senshi worksheet from my site. I'll link it in the description. Plus, while you're at my website, go ahead and sign up for my newsletter. There you'll get updates to my podcast, exclusive content, and behind the scene looks at my book. Now, let's dive in. All right, let's start with the first installment by time traveling just a bit. We've spent the last two episodes digging into the emotional arcs, the battles, the heartbreaks, and the villains. But now we should rewind and look at the actual storytelling variations across Sailor Moon's different forms. Because depending on how you entered the Moon Kingdom, your emotional blueprint might look very different. There are three main pillars of the Sailor Moon canon. There's first the original manga, there's the 90s anime adaptation, and then there's the newer reboot, Sailor Moon Crystal. And the vibes are not the same. We're going to begin with the manga Pure Moon Essence, the source, the purest form of Sailor Moon's world. And honestly, it's surprisingly mature. Naoko Takashi doesn't shy away from dark themes, from cosmic violence to existential dread. The arcs in this manga are tighter, the relationships are more emotionally charged, and the visuals, those lush spreads and delicate line work, feel dreamy and ethereal. A few standout elements from the manga are the tone, which is poetic, fast-paced, and it leans heavily into the mythology. Then there are the transformations, which are subtle and often spiritual. There's also the romance between Usagi and Mamoru, which is a bit more intense and it develops quickly with less snark. There's the villains, which get more backstory, more emotional weight, and this is especially true for the Four Generals and Queen Beryl. And then finally, there's a heavier emphasis on fate, reincarnation, and cosmic cycles. Also remember that Naoko was drawing this while working on the anime, so while they share DNA, they branched in totally different directions. Now, let's look at the 90s anime where there is heart, humor, and iconic chaos. This is the version that most Western fans first encountered, including myself. There was the rainbow-colored villains of the week, the moon tiara magic extravaganza that made us fall in love with magical girls in the first place. It's campy and hilarious, but it's still deeply emotional. But also, sometimes, it's totally off the rails. So let's look at what defined the 90s anime. Well, there was the pacing, which was much slower. There were tons of filler episodes where you could find yourself going 5 episodes without the actual plot moving, and somehow there's still a ton of crying. Then there's the character development, which was expanded so much more because the Senshi got individualized arcs, personality quirks, and complicated friendships due to those filler episodes. You also got to see Usagi's growth. It was a bit more gradual. She stayed goofy a bit longer, which made her transformation by the end feel a bit more earned. Then they really leaned into humor. This version leaned very heavy into the comedy. There were talking cats throwing massive shades, which made those characters iconic. And then, of course, we have to mention that there was the censorship in the Western dubs. Queer relationships were erased. There were gender swaps. And people turned into cousins, even though it's still very heavily romantic. It diluted the emotional power of a lot of the episodes, but the fans, they still found the subtext and made it real. And while the manga wrapped up with elegance, the 90s anime took its time, sometimes too much, but it gave us feelings and it made us understand the definition of a slow burn. It gave us a version of Usagi we all wanted to protect and become. Lastly, we're going to discuss Sailor Moon Crystal, the manga's Moonlight Mirror. This is the 2010s reboot that promised to be a bit more of a faithful adaptation, and in many ways it kind of was. The story arcs follow the manga almost beat for beat, giving fans the high-stakes drama and cosmic scope that the 90s shows sometimes softened. Here's what Crystal brought to the table. There was, of course, the faster pacing with no fillers. Less fluff means also less downtime for emotional nuances. There were also the visuals. They were a mix. Early seasons struggled with the animation's quality, but the later ones, like Eternal and Cosmos, are stunning, with more fluid transformations and dreamy effects. Then there's the tone. It's so much more serious. There's less comic relief and more mythic storytelling. Also, with the romance, it's stronger early on. Mamoru and Usagi are intense. There's not really any bunhead bickering. It's just soul deep, sometimes melodramatic love. And then there was the Senshi focus. More faithfulness to the manga structure, but a little less space for the girls' personalities to truly shine. And this is especially true in the earlier seasons, so you don't feel that same level of connections that you got during the 90s anime. Crystal asks us to remember that it's a mirror of what Takashi originally intended, and while it's beautiful, it sometimes feels like it rushes past the emotional buildup that made the 90s version a bit unforgettable. So which one is the real Sailor Moon? Well, that's the fun part. All of them are. Each version speaks to a different side of Usagi's story, and maybe a different version of ourselves. The manga is for your inner mystic. The 90s anime is for your inner best friend, and the crystal is for your inner chosen one, stepping into your legacy. Here's what writers and creators can take away: that the same story told in different ways kind of tends to reveal different truths. So if you're ever afraid to rework a draft, reboot a story, or change the lens, take this as a permission to try new things, because Sailor Moon has been many things, and somehow she's always exactly what we needed. Now let's take a moment to take a look at books that echo the moonlight. Now that we've compared the versions of Sailor Moons across media, let's shift our lenses to books, because yes, the Moon Kingdom left glittery fingerprints all over our shelves. We're going to look at two specific YA series, both written by incredible women of genre fiction, and explore the way these authors take Sailor Moon's themes of identity, grief, love, and magical duty and remix them a bit in something powerful and unique. Now, I do want to say that there are series out there for adults that are very Sailor Moon based. However, I'm not going to touch on those today, as well as I have no proof that the authors of these YA series was thinking Sailor Moon when they wrote this. However, when I was reading it, I was feeling Sailor Moon. So let's dive in. We're going to begin first with Wicked Lovely by Melissa Marr. So let me set the scene. Author Melissa Marr released Wicked Lovely in 2007 at the height of paranormal YA popularity. But instead of vampires or werewolves, she gave us fae, cold, ancient, cruel, and alluring. The story follows a girl who can see fairies and wants nothing to do with them. But when she's marked as the destined summer queen by the fae's king, she's dragged into a centuries-old struggle. Sound familiar? It's one of those situations where you didn't ask for this power, you didn't want this role, but you can't ignore it anymore. If anyone feels like this is a bit like Usagi, then we're on the same page. We have this reluctant heroine who is called to rule. Similar to Usagi, this character doesn't want the crown, but the crown finds her. The emotional core isn't about hunger for power, it's about the burden of it. Then there's this romantic complexity in the story. There's a love triangle, yes, but it's deeper than that trope. The magical prince offers this main character a world of legacy and responsibility, while the mortal boyfriend offers grounded love, sound, and choice. This sounds a bit like Mamoru versus Destiny. Then there's also the bit of transformation and sacrifice, where in this story, the main character has to step into her power as well as give something up, just like Usagi, because the power doesn't come for free. And finally, they use emotion as weapon and vulnerability. Just like the Senshi, this main character's strength doesn't come from physical domination. It comes from empathy, from refusing to lose herself in a world built on manipulation. So, writer's tip. If you're working on a magical system or power structure, look at how Mar builds rules around consent, fear, and choice. It's eerie and elegant and a great study in tension building. The next book we're going to discuss is Legendborn by Tracy Deonn. Now buckle up because this next one is deep. Tracy Deonn's Legendborn debuted in 2020 and exploded onto the YA fantasy scene for good reason. It blends Arthurian legend, grief, generational trauma, and secret societies into one stunning high-stakes ride. In this, we follow Brie Matthews, a 16-year-old black girl entering UNC Chapel Hill early just after losing her mother in an accident. When she uncovers a secret magical order and a hidden part of her own history, she has to decide, who am I really, and what legacy do I claim? Does this sound like reincarnation or destiny to anyone else? In this, we see some parallel tropes and themes to Sailor Moon. To begin, there's the reclaimed identity. Brie's story is all about unraveling the truth behind who she is and not what others tell her. That's classic Sailor Moon energy. Usagi doesn't inherit her identity, she reclaims it, piece by painful piece. Additionally, this story has grief as power. Brie's magic is directly tied to her pain. The deeper her loss, the stronger her powers. And the more she questions whether the system she's entering deserves her loyalty. This is so Sailor Saturn coded, and Usagi too. Her grief over past lives, lost friends, and cosmic burdens is what sharpens her strength. This also is a story about found family and complicated heritage. The Order of the Round Table isn't perfect, and Brie's lineage is complicated, just like the Moon Kingdom. The past holds both trauma and magic. Brie's journey becomes about choosing her path, not just accepting what's been handed to her. And then finally, this has love and fate. There's a slow burn, high stakes romance in Legendborn that mirrors Usagi and Mamoru beautifully. There's torn legacies with past life echoes, destiny versus desire, and it's emotionally fraught in the best way. Both authors tend to tap into the same well that Sailor Moon draws from, the tension between fate and free will, the pain and beauty of transformation, romance that elevates but never defines their heroine, softness as strength, and darkness as part of the inner journey, not the end of it. And what I love most is that neither of these characters starts out ready. They aren't polished warriors. They struggle, they resist, and they make messy choices. And in the end, that is what makes them magical. This is the kind of story that needs to be told. We need to stop and think about our current protagonists. What powers are they resisting and what grief might be tied to it? Because maybe, just maybe, that resistance is the first step towards transformation. All right, books covered. Let's talk about the screens that raised us. Because long after Sailor Moon twirled into battle, her glittering influence rippled into television. Sometimes quietly, sometimes loud and proud. Today, I want to focus on two wildly different but spiritually connected shows. And while one is sparkly and French and CGI, the other is snarky, American, and super 90s. But they both owe a serious moon debt. So let's break it down. We're going to begin first with Miraculous, Tales of Ladybug and Cat Noir. The premise here is that Marinette Dupain-Cheng is a regular Parisian teenager. She's awkward, kind, fashionable, and secretly in love with her classmate Adrian. But when Paris is in danger, she transforms into Ladybug, a superhero blessed with magic, luck, and incredible outfits. Her partner, the charming, flirtatious Cat Noir, who just so happens to be Adrian. Cue the double identity drama. Yes, it's this weird love square and a love triangle and a romantic time loop, and I'm kind of here for it. So this show has so many parallels to Sailor Moon. It has the secret identity chaos. Like Usagi and Mamoru in the early seasons, Marinette and Adrian don't know each other's alter egos. This leads to emotional mix-ups and deep yearning. It's, I love you, but I don't know it's you, every episode. And for some reason, it has not yet gotten old. Then there's the transformation magic. Each character has a miraculous, a magical sidekick, a kwami, and a signature phrase to activate their powers. Does this sound familiar? This is a classic Henshin format. Marionette's spot on is a modern echo of Moon Prism power. Further, there's the villains of the week formula. Much like the 90s Sailor Moon anime, Miraculous uses a structure where each episode introduces a new akumatized villains, regular people consumed by negative emotion. It's not just about defeating them, it's about understanding what broke them and returned them to themselves. Further, they're using emotion as power. Ladybug's victories rely less on brute force and more on cleverness, kindness, and hope, another signature Sailor Moon trait. Further, Marinette fights with empathy so she can restore and not destroy. Then there's also the cosmic romance and fate. The Adrian Marinette dynamic is pure celestial tension. They're destined, but also in their own way. It's not reincarnation, but it feels like soulmates stumbling towards each other across the fog of teenage awkwardness. And it hits pretty good. In this magical fantasy, we see a sweet blend of light-hearted tone with emotional stakes, and Miraculous proves to be a masterclass in how to do it without losing heart. Every episode may be formulaic, but the heart truly transforms it, and it makes it that peak magical girl energy. Next, we're going to talk about Buffy the Vampire Slayer. So good, a classic. Where we're in sunny California, where we meet high school student Buffy Summers, who just wants to pass her classes and live a semi-normal life. But there's one problem. She's the chosen one, a slayer gifted with the strength to battle vampires, demons, and ancient evil. She dies, she comes back, she falls in love with monsters, she carries the weight of thousands of destinies, and in the first season, she does it in a pair of boots and a prom dress. Does that sound familiar? There are so many parallels to Sailor Moon. Of course, there's a reluctant heroine. Buffy and Usagi are cut from the same cloth. Again, they didn't ask for this life. They kind of stumble, they whine and they cry, and then they rise. Every battle is a choice. Every choice chips away at their childhood. They both hold grief in one hand and destiny in the other. Additionally, both stories have found family as power. Buffy builds a circle of fierce, flawed, and loyal companions in Willow, Xander, Giles, Tara, Anya, and Spike. She doesn't fight alone, and each member of her Scooby Gang reflects part of who she is, just like the Inner Senshi reflect pieces of Usagi. And then Buffy would not be Buffy without the love, the loss, and the legendary battles. Buffy's romances are emotionally devastating. From Angel to Spike, her relations are drenched in fate, desire, regret, and sometimes literal soul-crushing consequences. Do you remember when Angel lost her soul after her one night of happiness? That's Endymion possessed by Queen Beryl level of tragic. Also, this story has a trauma of transformation. Buffy isn't just a slayer, she's a girl who keeps losing versions of herself. Every season asks, how much more can she take? And yet, like Usagi, she keeps choosing the fight because of love, duty, and there's no one else. Lastly, there is a magic as a metaphor. Whether it's Willow's descent into dark magic or Buffy's death and return cycle, the show never forgets magic is emotional. It's not just about power, it's about pain, agency, and identity. That's something that Sailor Moon teaches us too. Buffy is a storytelling blueprint for how to balance supernatural arcs with deeply human stakes, and it reminds us the monsters are metaphor, the real battle is inside the heart. Both of these shows, though massively different in tone and time, carry the essence of Sailor Moon's DNA. Heroines who carry the world but still crave normalcy. There's magic that costs something real, battles that shape the soul, and friendships that outlast the darkness. Whether you're watching sparkly CGI Paris or walking the haunted halls of Sunnydale High, the message stays the same. You don't need to be perfect to be powerful. You just need to keep showing up with heart. So, are you ready for some silver screen shoutouts? Because next, we're going to head into the movie territory, including one that totally surprised me in the best way. So, let's roll the reel and head to the movies. Because some of the most powerful echoes of Sailor Moon don't just live in serialized shows or book trilogies. They pulse through films that celebrate girlhood, magic, identity, and the power to choose transformation even when the cost is high. Today, we're going to spotlight two wildly different films that both channel that inner Senshi spirit. So let's dive in. We're going to begin with 1996, The Craft. Here we have four high school girls, outcasts, misfits, and loners, who form a coven of witches. At first, it's everything they dreamed of: power, confidence, and control. But as their magic grows, so do the consequences. And what starts as a bond becomes a battle between ego, envy, and identity. It's dark, moody, angsty, and dripping with the iconic 90s energy. The 5 top tropes and themes here is the found family that turns fractured, magic as power fantasy, mean girls with spells, transformation via vengeance, and the be careful what you wish for curse. And this movie has so many Sailor Moon parallels. Okay, on the surface, this might feel like the anti-Sailor Moon. There are no talking cats, no pastel bows, but listen deeper. Just like the Senshi, these girls start off alone, isolated, mocked, ignored. Their magic doesn't give them powers, it gives them a sense of belonging. A mirror to Usagi's power to bring people together. But where Usagi unifies through love, the girls in The Craft are pulled apart by pain. It's the shadow version of a magical girl team. Each member of the coven taps into their trauma, whether it's abuse, racism, body shame, or loneliness. And their powers aren't about sparkles, they're about survival. Just like the Senshi carry the weight of past lives, deaths, and cosmic burdens, these girls are carrying real-world pain, and they try to transmute it through magic. Then there's the central lesson in The Craft. Power without healing leads to ruin. Nancy, the unofficial leader of the coven, crumbles under the weight of unchecked trauma and toxic control. It's very Queen Beryl coded, if you ask me, where there's this wounded girlhood that turns dangerous. And in Sailor Moon, witch often meant villain. But in The Craft, Witchhood is complex. It's power and punishment, desire and danger, feminine rage and longing. And that same duality runs underneath Usagi and her journey too. She's a beacon of hope, yes, but she will also destroy worlds when she's pushed far enough. In my opinion, The Craft is essential viewing. It reminds us that not all magical girls heal. Some burn, and that story deserves to be told too. The next movie is going to be 2025's K-pop Demon Hunters. Set in a stylized near-future Korea, this action-packed animated film follows a globally famous K-pop girl group with a secret. When the stage lights go out, they become elite demon hunters, using their talents and their unshakable bond to battle supernatural threats and protect the world. Yes, you heard me. K-pop idols who fight demons, and they are amazing. This movie has so many tropes and themes. There's the dual identity with fame versus mission, group magic, plus the girl group dynamics. There's the stylized transformation, fashion as power, action as performance, and demons equal metaphors for internal and cultural pressures. And in this one, the Sailor Moon parallels, baby. Oh, this film is like a love letter to Sailor Moon fans who grew up and still wanted the glitter, but with the sharper edges. So let me count the ways. First, there is the magical girl meets pop culture. Much like the Senshi, this team isn't just fighting evil. They're doing it while managing public personas. The transformation sequences, fully choreographed. Weapons, mic turned scythes, fashion as shields, and some serious combat boot kicks. Just like Asagi's brooch or Mars charm scrolls, everything is both aesthetics and strategics. Where Sailor Moon made its transformation scenes more iconic visual metaphors for identity, K-pop Demon Hunters takes it a step further. These girls perform for the world and then battle to protect it. The pressure of being perfect, it's part of the conflict. So is the question, who gets to see your real face? Underneath the high concept action and slick animation is a story about friendship, legacy, fear, and fame. These girls are more than a team. They're chosen, tested, and remade by what they endure. Just like the Senshi, they rely on each other to survive. Their harmony, both literal and emotional, is their power. When one falters, the others have to adjust. They don't just defeat demons, they sync like a unit. And it's so satisfying to watch. And just a moment of real talk here. I hesitated with K-pop Demon Hunters at first. I thought, this is cute for the kids, but it's probably not going to be for me. And then my house became a full-on K-pop battlefield. My younger two had this movie on repeat. At first, I was catching snippets in the background, those choreographed battles with a bit of a catchy soundtrack, and I found myself pausing mid-stir, like, wait, who's she fighting, and why is this choreography so tight? Next thing, I might have downloaded the entire album and then found myself playing it one evening when the house was quiet and there were no kids in sight. I was alone with no distractions and no shame. And y'all, I am in love. The music, phenomenal. The story, oh my God, more layered than I expected. And the emotion, oh, chef's kiss. There are a few little animation nitpicks here and there. Yes, obviously. But when a movie hits you in the creative soul like this one did, those critiques melt into the background. The feeling it gave me was like I just stepped into a neon Sailor Moon alternate version, and it was everything. I'm not even pretending to be chill about it. I'm waiting with bated breath for the next two movies, possibly three. I've got theories, I've got favorite characters, and if you hear an episode down the road where I deep dive this film solo, don't you be surprised. Because this movie, it did not just entertain me, it inspired me. As a writer and a creator, and let's be honest, as a magical girl at heart who still wants her own transformation sequence, this movie was everything. So, quick shout out to the K-pop Demon Hunters for sneaking into my creative brain and planting book ideas like confetti. Well, from my ramble, this was the magic of movies. Whether it's from 1996 or 2025, the DNA of Sailor Moon continues to shape how we tell stories about power, pain, friendship, and transformation. So, what do we take from all this moon-inspired media? Well, first, that characters need to transform not only visually, but emotionally. In Sailor Moon, transformation is literal. It sparkles, music, upgraded outfits, but what really matters is what it represents. Usagi doesn't just get stronger because of a new wand. She gets stronger because she chooses to face what scares her. Second is legacy. Legacy doesn't have to be literal reincarnation. It can be a psychological inheritance. Sailor Moon's characters remember lives they didn't know they had, but that concept gets deeper. What memories do we carry from our families? What stories shape who we become, even if they're not ours? Third is your heartache, hope, loss can all be infused into your character's arc. Usagi saves the world with tears in her eyes. She wins because she feels deeply and not in spite of it. Fourth is that compassion can save worlds, even in darkness. It's not always the strongest punch that wins the battle. It's the one who refuses to stop caring. Usagi chooses love even when she's been hurt. She sees people, even the villains, and that becomes her greatest strength. Writers are able to create characters who value kindness, who reach for connection even when it costs them, and who stays gentle in a sharp world. That's not always weakness. That's resistance. And something to think about in this light, thinking of the craft, is ensuring that we sometimes take a mirror to these stories and see how we can twist that trope of characters who value kindness to characters who have never received kindness. Keep thinking outside of those creative boxes and see how we can elevate this into a new story. Then there's also that the antagonist should bleed just a little bit. Let someone mourn them. Thinking of Queen Beryl, her four generals, even Galaxia, these villains weren't one note. They were a bit tragic, complicated, and often manipulated or heartbroken. Don't just give your villain a motive, give them a moment, a scene where we see the scar behind the rage. Let them be missed. Let someone hesitate before hurting them. You create real tension when your audience feels for the villain. My final thoughts here is that the story that we write, that we create, doesn't have to sparkle. It just needs to resonate. Not every story you create is going to have that glittery transformation sequence, though we love them. But every story should feel like something. Let your characters transform visibly or invisibly. Let your villains ache and let your magic mean something. And remember, if it's leaving a mark on someone's heart, that's magic enough. So, what sticks with you from Sailor Moon? Is it the sparkle of a transformation sequence? Or maybe it's the slow burning romance that spans lifetimes. It could be a villain who's just felt more broken than bad. Or possibly it's the way a group of magical girls taught you that softness can be strength and that survival is its own kind of victory. Because here's the little truth. Legacy isn't just what a story tells you. It's what it leaves behind in you. It's what reshapes your lens, and it's what's whispering that you're not alone. And Sailor Moon, in all of her forms, has whispered that to millions of us, to those awkward kids, the emotional ones, the ones who are still figuring out how to stand up after the fall. So, if this series made you feel seen, even just a little, I am so glad you're here. Before I leave, I'm going to leave some quick Moonbeam reminders before we close the series out. First, be sure to download your free Inner Senshi worksheet from my website. It's designed to help you reflect, create, and maybe meet your own magical girl alter ego. Second, I would so appreciate it if you visited my website and signed up for my newsletter to get all the good stuff. I'm talking behind the scene podcast updates, exclusive contents for creatives, and sneak peeks of my paranormal mystery novel, The Missing Reflection, and the soon to come book 2. And if you have a moment, pretty please consider leaving me a review or just share this podcast with your friend or someone you know who loves Sailor Moon. Let's spread the starlight. And from here, I'm asking you to keep creating, stay curious, and whether you're channeling Mercury's brains, Mars' fire, Jupiter's strength, Venus's charm, or Zagi's heart, you have the power. See you in the next chapter. Bye.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Chickling Chronicles. Make sure you like and subscribe on your favorite podcast platform so that you never miss a story or a conversation. See you next time.